Hi PM, Phil Curry from the AFR. Just on your message on climate change, you said given the emissions that are already in the air, that this is going to be the sort of the new normal, if you like, the situation we're going to have to learn to live with. This summer alone has made a massive whack on your budget situation. If this, as the scientists tell us and the National Park Rangers and the firemen tell us, is going to happen nearly every year or every other year, how sustainable do you think this is going to be economically on the nation, the cost of climate change and trying to get your budget in surplus and keep it there?
It's a good question, and it's obviously one that is the great challenge of managing the budget and why you have to be so careful with your financial management. That's why, Phil, today I very much seek to cast this in the same context as our national security decisions. I think it very much falls within the scope of that, particularly when it comes to resilience and adaptation measures. And the thing about resilience and adaptation measures, they're as true for a government as they are for a farmer. So if you put the investment in up front to build your resilience, then you're more likely to get through, and the overall cost will ultimately be lesser for you on the preparedness that you make. It's taking out insurance for the climate in which we're living. And so I'd probably maybe come at it from a different perspective and to say it's a wise investment. 2% of your economy being invested in defence is a wise investment because it keeps Australia's strategic interests secure and safe. The investments we put into our security agencies, our border protection agencies, our biosecurity, all of these things, incredibly important, because the cost of not doing so when it comes to those issues falling over become very significant. That's not to say you can prevent the impacts of any and all disasters. Of course you can't. We all understand that. But what I am saying is that we really need now to lay down the longer-term investments, whether it's in how technology is being undertaken, the systems and practices we have in place to manage the risk down, to ensure that as we continue to live in this climate, that we are able to better cope and respond to what comes our way, which in turn makes the budget more sustainable, because it's not hit with the bigger impacts of avoidable situations. So I see it very much as part of responsible budget management, of responsible fiscal management, and importantly, part of the national security agenda.
Kieran Gilbert.
Kieran from Sky News. Prime Minister, thanks so much. You said in your speech that, and rightly, that we only are 1.3% of emissions globally, but when you look at every nation with a similar carbon footprint, it amounts to 40% of global emissions. Nations with a carbon footprint of 1.3
How do we go from 1.3 to 40%?
I'm saying all the nations together with a similar carbon footprint. Well, the point I'm making is, as a proud nation and middle power, we've made contributions, punched above our weight in so many different areas in terms of the Middle East and so on. Right now our troops are there patrolling with other nations. The point I'm getting at is, do you believe there's scope within you as a leader within this nation to step up our role and advocate? Because as you say, climate emissions don't have an accent, but you can advocate as a leader, our nation can advocate. Yeah. Is there scope to do that?
Well, let me tell you what the Australian accent is saying about emissions reduction right now. Meeting and beating our Kyoto targets, and that we're going to meet and beat our Paris targets. That's what the Australian accent is saying under our government. The Australian accent is saying we've got record levels of renewable investment. The Australian accent is saying that we're going to reduce our per capita emissions by half. The Australian accent is saying we're investing in technologies which will see us transition to alternative fuel sources, and that we're going to lead the way in technology and science and partner with others to do that. See, the Australian accent is there, and I'll seek to amplify that every opportunity I get. There are plenty who want to silence that accent, many from our own country, for whatever purposes they're seeking to do that for. But I'll keep speaking it strongly and loudly, that Australia, as I did at the United Nations last year, Australia is carrying its load and more. We are doing what you'd expect a country like Australia to do. But what I won't do is this. I'm not going to sell out Australians. I'm not going to sell out Australians based on the calls from some to put higher taxes on them, or to push up their electricity prices, or to abandon their jobs and their industries and tell them that they're just collateral damage of a global movement. I'm not going to do that.